I never expected the first thing I'd notice was the smell. It hit me the moment I stepped inside. Not quite rotten, but wrong. Like the tang that lingers after an electrical fire mixed with the heavy dampness of an old basement. I paused on the threshold, one hand still gripping the handle of the sliding glass door, weighing whether to call my sister and tell her I'd changed my mind. But she begged me to watch her place while she and Dan went to that silent yoga retreat, promising that her new house was cozy, just a little out of the way. It was only one weekend, and it was just a house. I slid the door shut behind me. The sound was oddly muffled, as if the thick trees surrounding the house swallowed up even that simple noise. The air inside pressed close, humid despite the October chill outside, and my footsteps on the hardwood floor seemed too loud. I set down my weekend bag and looked around, trying to get my bearings. The house was bigger than I remembered from the quick walkthrough last month. The living room stretched off to the right, dim despite the floor-to-ceiling windows. To the left, the kitchen gleamed with new appliances, but the light above the sink flickered, as if not quite sure it wanted to stay on. Long hallways branched off in both directions. Everywhere, there were mirrors, framed in dark wood, tucked into corners, catching my reflection at odd angles, making the space feel cluttered and uneasy. Anxiety prickled at the back of my neck, and I forced myself to laugh. "It's just a house," I said, voice too small in the emptiness. I tried to blame my nerves on the drive in. The road here twisted between thick stands of pine and oak, so narrow the GPS lost its signal halfway up the hill. The nearest neighbor was a quarter-mile away, hidden behind a tangle of hedges. It was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that makes you aware of your own breath. I busied myself unpacking, pushing away the feeling that I was being watched. In the guest room, my suitcase looked small on the oversized bed. The window overlooked the backyard, where the grass had grown in patchy, wild tufts. I tried to open the window for some fresh air, but it wouldn't budge, painted shut or swollen from the damp. The glass felt cold under my palm. Making my way back to the kitchen, I glanced at the thermostat. The temperature read 68, but it felt warmer, almost stifling. I fiddled with the dial, but nothing changed. I opened the fridge to get a bottle of water, and the whir of the compressor sounded like a distant sigh. I checked my phone. No signal, of course. I was used to spotty reception, but not complete silence. No messages, no bars. I put my phone on the counter and told myself I'd check for Wi-Fi later. By late afternoon, the shadows grew longer, creeping across the living room floor in slow, measured strides. I tried to settle in, flipping through one of the magazines my sister had left on the coffee table. The words swam before my eyes, and I found myself glancing up every few paragraphs, half expecting to see someone standing in the hallway. Once I caught a flicker of movement in a mirror, a shape darting behind me, but when I spun around, nothing was there. Just the empty kitchen and the silent, waiting house. The first real jolt came as the sun dipped behind the pines. I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth, staring at my reflection in the medicine cabinet mirror, when I heard footsteps overhead. Slow, deliberate, too heavy to be the house settling, too regular for the wind. I froze, toothpaste foaming in my mouth, listening. Another step. I braced my hands on the edge of the sink, trying not to breathe too loudly. The footsteps came again. 3 measured thuds, each one echoing in the ceiling above my head. There was no attic, just the low-slung roof, and maybe some crawl space for insulation. I spat the toothpaste out too quickly and wiped my mouth, eyes flicking to the corners of the mirror, as if expecting someone to suddenly appear behind me. The footsteps stopped. I waited, counting out slow seconds, heart thrumming in my throat. Rational explanations lined up in my mind. Maybe a raccoon or a squirrel had found its way under the eaves. Maybe it was just the house settling after all. The sound carried weird by the shape of the rooms. But as I listened, the silence pressed in, tighter and tighter, until I couldn't stand it anymore. I crept out of the bathroom and into the hallway, every floorboard protesting under my feet. Night had fallen hard. The windows were just black squares, swallowing all light. I listened, head tilted, straining for any sound above me. Nothing. My skin prickled with cold sweat. I grabbed my phone, still no signal, and debated calling out. But the thought of my voice bouncing back at me in that hush made my stomach twist. I forced myself to check the rooms upstairs. Each step up the narrow staircase felt heavier than the last. The landing was darker than it should have been. The overhead bulb flicked once, then held steady, humming faintly. I pushed open the door to the master bedroom. Empty, just neatly made sheets, and a scattering of my sister's books on the nightstand. The closet hung open, filled with her clothes, unmoving. I checked under the bed. Nothing but the faint smell. Slightly stronger up here. I tried the attic hatch in the hallway, but it was sealed shut with paint, the edges rough and untouched in years. When I got back downstairs, my hands wouldn't stop trembling. I almost laughed at myself, half angry at how jumpy I'd become. I turned on every light in the house, willing the brightness to drive out whatever weirdness had crept in. For a little while, it almost worked. I made dinner, microwaved soup, the kind that hisses and pops in the bowl, and sat at the kitchen table, watching my reflection in the window as I ate. But then the lights in the hallway began to buzz, the fixtures trembling with a faint, erratic rhythm. Every few seconds, they would dim, as if a cloud passed overhead. Except it was night, and the sky was perfectly clear. I went to tighten one of the bulbs, thinking maybe it was loose, but the glass was hot, almost burning my fingers. I drew my hand back fast, biting my lip. That's when I noticed the front door was ajar. Just an inch or two, enough for the outside air to creep in and tangle with the muggy warmth. I was certain I had locked it. I always did. First thing, force of habit from living alone. My breath caught. I edged toward the door, half expecting to see someone standing just outside, face pressed to the glass. But there was only the dark porch, the outline of the railing just visible, the woods beyond blending into a deeper black. I shut the door, checked the lock twice, then dragged a chair in front of it for good measure. It felt ridiculous, but I couldn't ignore the way my skin crawled. The house didn't feel empty. It felt like something was waiting, just out of sight. To distract myself, I tried to watch TV. Static. No channels came in, just a gray screen hissing softly. The Wi-Fi network showed up on my phone, but it wouldn't connect, no matter how many times I tried the password my sister had given me. The end. Connection icon just spun, searching for something that wouldn't answer. I held my phone tight, knuckles white, catching my own reflection in the black screen. My eyes wide, face drawn and strange, like someone I barely recognized. A sudden creak from the hallway snapped my attention up. Another noise, closer this time. A soft, dragging sound. Then a tap, 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 like fingers, or maybe nails against the wall. I muted the TV, though it wasn't making any real noise, just that distant static. The tapping paused, then started again, slower, as if whatever was making it was listening for my reaction. I told myself it had to be a branch against the siding, even though I knew the night was windless, the trees still. For a few minutes, the sound stopped, and I tried to convince myself it was over. I put away my soup bowl, washed it at the sink, and forced myself not to look in the mirror above the faucet. I could feel the house watching me, the way the silence seemed to draw in tighter every time I tried to relax. I went to bed with every light on in the guest room, the glow a sickly yellow against the walls. The unfamiliar sheets felt damp against my skin. I cocooned myself under the blanket, listening for any new noises. I tried to read, but the words kept blurring. I checked my phone for the 100th time. No signal, no messages, just an empty battery icon starting to blink. I plugged it into the charger and placed it on the nightstand. The charging cord stretched taut like a lifeline. I must have drifted for a while, because I woke to absolute darkness. The bedside lamp had gone out. Disoriented, I reached for my phone. The screen wouldn't turn on. The power was out, I realized, the digital clock on the dresser flashing blankly. The room felt even warmer, the air thick, pressing close. I sat up, listening. My own heartbeat sounded too loud, bouncing off the walls. From somewhere down the hall, I heard the low groan of a floorboard. Then, very quietly, what sounded like a door opening. The sound was so faint, I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. But after a long moment, I heard it again. Footsteps, slow and measured, approaching from somewhere deep in the house. I pressed my back to the headboard, trying to make myself as small as possible. Every instinct screamed to hide, to run, but my legs refused to move. The footsteps reached the threshold of the guest room and stopped. I couldn't see the door from my angle, just the strip of even black in the frame. I held my breath, waiting for the handle to turn. Nothing happened. After what felt like forever, I forced myself to creep out of bed. My bare feet made no sound on the rug, and I inched toward the door. I listened. Nothing. Gathering every ounce of nerve I had, I snapped the door open. Only the hallway, stretching away, the other doors shut tight. The smell was stronger now, sharper, tinged with old metal. I stepped out, hugging my arms to my chest. The silence felt thick, sticky, like it was trying to hold me in place. I moved down the hall, each step deliberate, passing the bathroom, then the closet, then the master bedroom. The door at the end of the hall, the one to the basement, which I hadn't even considered opening, stood slightly open. I knew for a fact it had been closed. I would have remembered. With a cold certainty, I realized the smell was coming from there, wafting up like a warning. I almost turned back, but something compelled me onward. I told myself I couldn't leave that door open, not with everything else so wrong. I approached, every inch of me,